Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with rap dad and hip-hop journalist Esteban Serrano. He is a seasoned music television producer and director with 20 years of experience. The first time the world got a glimpse of artists like Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, and many others was on live TV via Serrano. He has worked on some of the most iconic shows in the industry, including TRL and YO MTV Raps. As a lifelong hip-hop fan, Esteban has a deep understanding of the genre's impact on both music and society. This knowledge and his journey as a father gives him a unique perspective and culminates in his debut book, The 10 Dad Commandments, Fatherhood Through a Hip-Hop Lens. We cover a lot of ground. He's a great cat. Enjoy this interview.
Esteban, Joe Dimino, what's up, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
Everything's good here in Kansas City. It just keeps getting more exciting in this town. Where are you located?
I'm in New York City.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're actually getting that New York City fever lately. We won the World Championship, the NFL draft's coming here, World Cup, so we're starting to feel like a bigger city.
That's awesome. Kansas City. That's where the Royals are, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they're doing really bad, but yeah, that's it.
Man. Yeah, you guys beat my Eagles in the Super Bowl this year. I was very, very sad about that because I'm from West Philly, born and raised, and but I can't be mad. I love Andy Reid. Big Red is one of my favorite coaches of all time, and yeah, I love KC. I've spent some time there for work, and it was always an amazing experience.
Yeah, I think it's a surprise that, I think the Super Bowl was bittersweet, but I will tell you one thing. If you have any way to sway public opinion the next time this happens, never, ever, ever make Kansas City the underdog, whether it's the Royals or the Chiefs.
Right.
I'm telling you, we are going to roar back like a lion you never experienced.
Man. And they should have never been. It was a slap in the face and totally disrespectful to, one of the best football teams we've ever seen play the game. So, very, very...
the thing is that, it was a toss-up. Philly easily could have won that game, and I've never been up to Philly, but I always admire that there's similarities to me between Kansas City and Philly, like even with them being in the World Series. Yeah, you guys are going through a renaissance. And we've been going through that with the Royals in 14, 15. So I'm so happy for you guys. I hope you guys, the Phillies, come back and totally take it this year. Like, I'm pulling for you guys, and that could have been a toss-up. But I will tell you, if you ever get back to Philly and anybody's like, look, I got the ear for the football team that you need to hear from, I would say, if you ever do that again, don't ever be the underdog, because that's going to be the best way to go. But at any rate, man, it's great to meet you. And what I want to do first and foremost before we get into your life and kind of peel back the layers of who you are and what makes you tick. The last 3 years of the pandemic has been quite a thing. It's worked on all of us in very specific ways. How did you survive that time period? And how has it changed the way that not only you live your life but conduct business now?
Oh, man. So the pandemic, it changed me in so many ways. First and foremost, I've always been a family-oriented person. But that time that I got to spend with my family was so valuable, especially with that being such a trying time for my kids. Not being able to go out, not being social, trying to find a new way of being social, because my kids are very much in-person types of kids. They weren't very, they're not like what people would consider typical kids who would just live on the internet all the time and, have all their friends are kind of online. My kids are, athletic, or they skateboard, or, they're musicians. So it's very communal things that they were involved with. So watching them and helping them through that time was very, very crucial to me. But what it did for me in my business more than anything was it made me really prioritize the illusion of work-life balance. I don't ever think that's really a thing that can be achieved, but it really made me make my family even more of a priority coming out of the pandemic, because I've spent so much time with them and we enjoyed so much of each other's company. It's really hard to get me out of my house and away from my family to do something. So that's kind of how it really impacted my business. And what it also did was it really challenged me to think on my feet. It really challenged me to reinvent, how I create content, and, really expanding my network and reaching out to my network. If I had a shoot, in California, for example, that, obviously I wasn't going to be able to get to remotely, I was able to reach out to my contacts and say, hey, you got any good shooter producers, in San Diego or in, Los Angeles, and then I'd get on either FaceTime or via Zoom, and I could kind of monitor what the shoot was going on. I could even conduct interviews and things of that nature through Zoom. And so that also just made it even more of a reality that I could spend more time home with my kids and not miss a beat in terms of my business. But it also was eye-opening that I can help other people and employ them to do some of the things that I would normally jump on a plane, fly to another place, stay accommodations and ground transportation. Now I'm more of the mind of who can I, outsource this to and just oversee from a distance.
So you're the rap dad and hip-hop journalist, and I want to know, let's break that down a little bit more. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day, one of the kids looks up at you and asks, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
Wow, that's a great way to frame that question. What I would say to them was I talk to my favorite artists, rappers for a living. And whenever they're releasing music or they're involved in a film or they have some kind of project coming out, my job is to dive deep into their body of work, into whatever the music or the project is, find some of the things that would be interesting for us as fans to know, and then I talk to them about it and try to get those stories out. What I basically am is I am a fan who gets paid to be a fan, if that makes sense to a third grader.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I typically follow this up with, when you were in the third grade, what do you want to do for a living? But I could only imagine that this is the dream cake. This is what you probably envisioned.
This was the dream. By the time I was in third grade, MTV had taken over my life, and I was watching music videos nonstop. Especially growing up in West Philly, I grew up maybe 3 blocks away from Will Smith, the Fresh Prince. We had a few really big Philadelphia acts at the time, Steady B, Cool C. We had this group called EST. The guy who invented gangster rap was also from my neighborhood in West Philly. Schoolie D was his name. So Philly was a hotbed for hip-hop. So not only was I seeing it on my television and hearing it on my radio, but I'd leave my house. I'd go to the barbershop to get a haircut, and, Fresh Prince is sitting there getting his haircut, and there's a line around the corner of rappers who want to battle him to take his position. And I got to witness all of this from the time, I was, a small kid and that kind of really planted the seed that I wanted to be involved in the scene.
Man, that should be a painting right there. In fact, I might even get into one of these AI things and just put Will Smith haircut, LA,
man,
long line. Dude, I just would love to see what would pull up.
Oh, my God. It was a scene. I mean, it's a movie that I constantly replay in my mind from time to time. It was a highlight for sure.
The other day I so one of my main vocations is a jazz radio host, and I realize the lineage between different genres and idioms and all of that. And I always refer to the jazz elders as the Jazz Jedi Council in Cloud City and Empire. You know, you got Sonny Rollins up there. You got Lou Donaldson. You got all of these elders that are up there just looking over us. Because man, those cats, dude, they are the most the higher up you go the food chain in jazz, and I don't know how this works in rap and hip hop. They're the coolest people. Like I know Snoop, for instance. I've heard enough interviews. That dude is totally grounded, totally ultra wise and self-actualized. Yeah. He's just good, just a good dude. You can feel it. Jazz people, the jazz people have the same vibe, man. Like their whole goal, which I don't know if people understand, and I think a lot of the elders in the hip hop rap community do the same thing. There is a notion where that flame that exists needs to continue to be passed on, not only just because, but it needs to evolve, and the elders need to be there to help those that are trying to get into this craft. Do you sense that as well?
So what's interesting is early on, you got to remember, and this is perfect timing for this conversation, because this year in August, hip hop turns 50 officially. So the genre is very, very young still, and what we noticed maybe 10, 15 years ago, where the elders weren't ready to take up that mantle. And, hip hop being so competitive, it's damn near a contact sport. If a music genre could be that. And, so they were a little bitter. They didn't want to, these young new sounds coming in and disrupting, the flow of things. But I will say over the past, 10 years, with the introduction of artists like J. Cole and A$AP Rocky, Kendrick Lamar, some of the newer comers who have really, really, staked their claim, they came into the game paying so much respect to the elders that the elders had no choice but to kind of lay their egos aside and really put their arm around, the younger generation. So for a while, the OGs, as we refer to them as, they didn't want to accept that, they were the elders. They felt like they were still current. And then the newcomers kind of had a little rough patch between them. But the newer generation just embraced the whole element of the culture, the lineage, the honor that it is to grab a microphone, be called an MC, get on the stage, and really move the crowd. That's something that they really take pride in, and they tap into that history. So I will say that it's coming around for sure.
What was the first album you listened to that just blew your mind, made you think, man, this is the way, the truth and the light?
So what's crazy? Oh man, this is a wild story. So the first album that I listened to that blew my mind was NWA, Straight Outta Compton. And at the time I was super young. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And my dad, he was, in his very early 20s, very rebellious, very hip hop, like, that hip hop energy. And so he would play it over and over again. And like, it was just the beats, the rhymes, obviously the fact that it was explicit also, got me really excited. I felt like I was listening to something that I shouldn't be privy to. But at the same time, on the opposite side of that coin, I'd lived with my grandparents, my mother's side of the family, and my grandfather was a police officer in the city of Philadelphia, and he was a police officer for, I think, 25 years when he retired. So here I am listening to, F the police and all of this bad energy toward the police, and I'm living under the roof where this is the policeman who is providing, for this home. So it created an interesting dynamic, and it was honestly at that moment where I internalized hip-hop as entertainment in some respects, but also that not everyone's opinion was my opinion or experience. my relationship at that time with the police in my very limited encounter was my grandfather and all of his friends and peers who would come over the house, and they were amazing, men, and, they all, kind of poured into me at the same time. But then also the reality for other people were, their experience was not the same. So I was able to respect everyone's lanes and opinions and their experiences and not kind of internalize them as my own.
So of all of the artists that you've interviewed, I'm sure you have a long list, and it's rather robust, but what's the one dream interview you haven't done yet that you want to do?
Oh, man, that is a great question. My dream interview is probably, honestly, I would love to sit down with the Fresh Prince himself, with Will Smith. He was and is one of the icons to me. I actually did get to work with him when I was working at MTV's TRL back in the day. We did this high school week. We would have these themed out weeks, and we did high school week. And when I noticed that Will Smith was on the schedule to promote, I believe it was Hitch at the time, I believe it was Hitch. I spoke to my team and convinced them to book the Overbrook High School, which is where Will Smith grew up, which was the high school in my neighborhood. I didn't go to that high school because it was too bad, and my family was like, "You're not going there." But it was a great moment in time at that time. But now, as a father, as someone who's 20 years in the game, I'd love to sit down with Will and talk about, a lot of the trials and tribulations that he's experienced, both in his career, reinventing himself, how he faces challenges, but also, as a father, he has some of the most interesting children on planet Earth, but all seem to be very positive, wholesome, lights in this world. I'd love to know how he was able to preserve that in, one of the most toxic places on the planet, which is Hollywood.
So what is it that gets you out of bed every day and motivates you to be who you are and to get what you want done?
So when I first started out, when I became of age where I knew I needed to find a career path, and I knew from a very early age that I didn't like work. I don't like to work. I love to create. I love to be creative. I love to, I don't have a problem with hard work. I just don't want it to feel like work. So what I noticed was at the time, again, MTV, music is my beat. I noticed that hip hop wasn't very well represented in media. I felt like there was a lot of meat still left on the bone in some of these interviews because the people who were behind the scenes maybe didn't understand what was at hand. They didn't get the nuances and, the hidden meanings and symbolisms in the music or in the fashion. So I said, I'm going to be the one who helps to paint hip-hop the way I see it, so that when the world is receiving this information and this content, they get to see the full beauty of not only the genre, because in hip-hop we don't consider it a music, we consider it a culture. It is a lifestyle that we live. It goes beyond, the sounds that we're hearing. It influences our fashion choices, our vacation places, sometimes politically who we're voting for. It is, a very much a guiding light and source. So that's what kind of gets me out of the bed, every morning, is how can I, present hip hop in a different way. I was able to do that really well at MTV, at TRL. I remember, Jay-Z coming into one of our meetings and saying, I've been here a number of times and I felt like you guys didn't know who I was. This was the first time I felt like you got me. He was just very appreciative of, the way he was presented on air. And, that was just a, kind of a recharge to my battery. And now that's where I'm headed next with this book, The 10 Dad Commandments, Hip Hop, Fatherhood Through a Hip Hop Lens. a lot of my fatherhood journey, I've loved having conversations with other fathers in the hip hop space. I've also gleaned a lot of knowledge from listening to other rappers rap about their relationships with their children, that maybe they didn't have that same type of relationship with their own biological father. But I definitely noticed that when I became a father, that there's a lot of father theme within the hip hop genre and the community. So my sights are set on that next for sure.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into a much younger version of yourself in your 20s, and based on the wisdom you've gained through your life, you could give that version of you a piece of advice. What would you tell your young version?
I would tell them to keep going in the direction that we're headed in, because we make it, and we make it so far beyond your wildest dream that you thought, or, when you started out on this path. But I would also tell them to, from time to time, stop and enjoy the moment. I remember being in my young 20s, and I was, working at TRL at the time. And I would look at my peers around me who maybe had 5, 8, and sometimes 10 years on me. And I would be, so enamored with where they were, in their lives or in their careers, that I didn't really appreciate where I was in mine early on. So, as a kid from West Philly, a dyslexic kid at that, didn't go to a great college, wasn't ever a great student, ever. For me to be where I am, at 22 when I was working at MTV, for me to be there was such a huge accomplishment. And then for where I am now in my career, in my life, I'm so appreciative of the moments, and I wish that I kind of lived in that sweetness a little more when I was younger. Don't be so caught up with where you're not when you look at your vision, but appreciate the fact that you're taking these steps and you're making progress.
So of all the things you've accomplished in life, what are you the proudest of?
And I'm not saying this because this book is coming out very soon, or by the time you're listening to this, it may very well be out. This is the highlight of my career for sure. I've found a lane that hasn't really been tapped into to the extent that I'm tapping into it, as it pertains to the relationship between hip hop and fatherhood. This is super important to me. Also, as a father, my oldest son is 19, my middle son is 15, my youngest is 13, all boys. God forbid if anything were to happen to me, I know that this book will position them to, be great fathers. And that's also super important to me. And the content that I've been creating around the book has gotten so much love and attention from people who, I don't even know. I put up one clip, and random people, I'm shocked. It's been men and women who've, reached out and really resonated with the content. So I think that of all the things I've done, and I've done TRL. I was a host on television for 6 years. I broke some of the biggest artists on, TV, 2 Chainz, A$AP Rocky, Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar, and the list goes on. I was able to bring back MTV Raps, one of my favorite shows on planet Earth that, I grew up watching. I was able to bring that back last year, and I brought it back in Asia and in the UK. I've done some amazing things in my life, but this for sure is the greatest accomplishment, that I'll have. And I'm excited to push this book and this message for years and years to come.
So everyone out there has a perception of you. There's bubbles of people that exist in our life, from family to friends to fans to clients, colleagues, but you ultimately live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Wow. I've never been asked that question before. I've never even thought about that. Who do I think I mean, again, it goes back to maybe the first question you asked me. I am a fan who gets paid to be a fan. I am so blessed that I've been able to design a life for myself where I get to do what I love for a living. I mean, you know, and I don't want this to get out there, but if they didn't pay me to do this, I'd still be doing it. But I'm glad they pay me. Trust me, I am. But you know, who I am is I feel like a lot of times who people think I am and who I share that I am on my social media. I am a very spiritual, you know, God first person. I am a father who like is loved and is passionate about that role and responsibility. You know, I'm a husband. I am becoming a better and better and better husband, you know, every day, and it's something that I am definitely working toward. I have an amazing wife who sometimes I don't feel I deserve, and so because of that, I'm trying to step my game up. But you know, and I'm an open book. I'm someone who will always be honest with you, regardless of our relationship. Obviously, I'll do my best to not, you know, break any hearts or hurt any feelings. But if you trusted me enough to ask me something, I'm going to, you know, take that to heart, and I'm going to give you an honest answer. I'm just having such a great experience. And I realize at times, sometimes I suffer from survivor's remorse, you know, growing up where I grew up and was having conversations with friends who maybe not made it, you know, out of some of the circumstances that we were kind of born into. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just super blessed. I'm glad that I get to do what I do for not only a living, but, you know, as something I've dedicated my life to. And I know that when it's all said and done, I will have made an impact on people.
So I want to end this with a fun question here before we get to your book and more about you and where people can go. And I'm going to preface it this way. You know, I've been a jazz journalist for quite a while. I've done lots of interviews, and I remember there's always a moment when you're a journalist where someone tells you something that blows you away. And my moment, one of them, there's been many, was when the great Randy Weston, a legendary jazz pianist, explained to me many trips that he took to Africa. On one in particular, he explained when he understood where jazz came from. And he said, you got to understand, in Africa, everything swings. The elephant tails, the trees, everything you look around at in that continent swings. So it's no wonder that music that swings so hard came from there. And when he told me that, it was like a curtain was parted. Like I remember the hair went up on my neck. I got it. Like the etymology, the history, and just the way that Randy Weston is. He's a beautiful soul, like way more evolved than any other human that I think I will ever be able to speak to on this planet. So my question to you is, what was one of those revelatory moments for you where you were like, wow, I'm actually hearing this from this person?
Wow, man. Oh, I have to think about that one for a second. I mean, the one thing that kind of comes to mind is, you know, growing up, Nas was one of my favorite, you know, rappers growing up. He was the epitome of cool, the epitome of smart and intelligent. You know, the way he dressed, the way he moved, everything about him was just like I was enamored by. And I finally got to sit down with him. After 3 times we missed the appointment. Either it was something that was wrong with his schedule, or, you know, one time I think it was a hurricane that kind of stopped us. But he was on the promo run for Life is Good. And I'm sitting down next to him finally for our first time. And we're just having this conversation, and I'm asking him all of the questions that I wanted to ask, like that I've been just thinking about. Nas has this song called Rewind, where he literally tells a story in reverse. Like, it is one of the greatest hip-hop records of all time. So we're like diving in. And at the end of the interview, he looked at me, he was like, wow, man, I haven't had this much fun in a while, and you can tell that, and I'm sure that you've gotten this experience also as a journalist. A lot of times artists don't like to interview. Artists don't like to have conversations. They don't like talking about themselves, or they don't want to talk about, the album, or this is their 50th interview about this project and they're over it. And by the time they get to you, they've kind of been beaten up and worn out. But, he looks at me and he goes, man, ain't life great? And I was just like, at that moment, life could not have gotten any better.
Yeah.
Any better for me. And it also, the age-old saying, you never want to meet your heroes, because sometimes, they don't live up to the dream or the hype that you envision with them. And Nas, definitely not only didn't let me down, I didn't let him down. And it was just a moment that, like, really reminded me, like, look at what we do for a living. Look at what you're doing right now. You're talking to some of your favorite artists, and you're so excited, and they're feeling your energy, and they, and they know that you know their content, and so they're enjoying themselves, you're enjoying yourself, and then at the end of the week, you're going to get paid for this. So it was just a moment that I hold, all the time.
That's wonderful, man. That's a great story. So for anyone that wants to get the book, learn more about you, anything related to your world, where can they go?
So I am an Instagram junkie. And you can follow me or find me on my Instagram. It's the Esteban Serrano, all together, all one word. You can find me there. You can, see some of the things that I'm going through. You'll see me cracking jokes on my kids. You'll see me, sharing real fatherhood things that I've been coming across and that I'm learning. You'll definitely hear more about the book. You get to see, some of the TV shows that I'm producing and on projects, around that. Everything that I do is very much rooted in hip hop. And then the book, it comes out May 15th. You can find that at Mahal Publishing. It'll be everywhere, online, all of the outlets and retailers. But the mahalpublishing.com, MAHAL publishing.com is where you can, get a special edition pre-order, or, you can find links to grab the book.
Best of luck with the book and everything as we move forward, man.
Thank you so much, man. This was great. I had a great time. You are a great host. You can tell that, you've got the chops, and, you've asked me questions that I may steal and ask other people. I'll give you credit, though.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that last question I asked, I've had a couple of heavyweights to just say, no one's ever asked me that, like, kind of like if we were in person, they may take a swing, but not really. Like, what the hell are you asking me? And it almost sounds like a gangster, like, who do you think you are? Are you a clown with the big nose, the big feet? So anyway, yeah, you were wonderful, man. You're 100% pro. It's so good to kind of be mano-a-mano and get into it. So yeah, man, best of luck. It's so good to see people soar out there, and good luck with the Eagles and the Phillies, man.
Thank you, man. Likewise with everything you have going on. I'm excited. We'll stay in touch.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.